All right, welcome to this explainer. Today we're taking the incredibly dense 2026 amendments to India's Ecomark rules and, well, translating them into a clear, actionable blueprint for sustainable manufacturing. If you've been tracking global environmental regulations, you know that eco-labels can sometimes feel like just another marketing tool, a bit of greenwashing, right? But not anymore. The Ministry of Environment, Forest, and Climate Change has just dropped a comprehensive, rigorous framework that completely redefines what it means to be a green manufacturer in India. We're going to unpack exactly what these new rules demand from industries ranging from paints all the way to batteries. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at 1. The new Ecomark era. 2. Building green, paints and wood. 3. Sustainable power, batteries. 4. Everyday eco, paper and coir. 5. Clean safety, fire extinguishers. And finally 6. The manufacturing future.
Okay, let's jump straight into Section 1. The new Ecomark era, the non-negotiable baseline.
So, the Ecomark is officially no longer just a nice-to-have marketing badge. It now requires strict, foundational compliance before you can even get your foot in the door. To even apply, a manufacturer first has to meet all the relevant Bureau of Indian standards for quality and performance. On top of that, they have to produce consent clearances under the Water Act of 1974 and the Air Act of 1981. But the real kicker here, the absolute game changer, is the mandate to maintain a valid ISO 14001-2015 certification for their environmental management system. This proves that continuous improvement in pollution prevention isn't just empty promises, it's actively audited and verified. And to really push for ultimate transparency, the government is putting the power of verification right into the consumer's smartphone. Think about this. Every single Ecomark product must now feature a mandatory QR code right on its packaging. When you scan it, it doesn't just bump you to some generic promotional website. No, it details the exact environmental criteria that specific product met to earn the label. It's a brilliant, straightforward mechanism to stop greenwashing dead in its tracks.
Moving on to Section 2. Building green, toxicity limits and natural alternatives.
In the building sector, we're seeing a massive pivot away from harmful chemicals toward natural binders, alongside a strict, total ban on persistent, forever chemicals. For wood substitutes, think plywood, particle board, or MDF, manufacturers are now forced to use at least 20% natural adhesives. We're talking things like soya, starch, or lignin, significantly cutting down on synthetic resins. On the flip side, the bans are absolute. The rules explicitly forbid persistent organic pollutants, including PCBs and PFAS. They also completely ban ozone-depleting substances listed in the Montreal Protocol, and strictly limit heavy metals like lead, mercury, and cadmium across both paints and wood finishes.
0. Literally 0. That is the maximum allowable limit of volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, in grams per liter for Ecomark certified powder coatings. It's effectively demanding completely VOC-free formulations. Just to put that into perspective, for water-based paints, the limit is aggressively capped at 10 grams per liter and 200 grams per liter for solvent-based paints. But for powder coatings, the expectation is absolute 0. This is a massive, massive win for indoor air quality.
All right, Section 3, Sustainable Power, Closing the Loop.
It's a critical question, isn't it? Where do all those old batteries actually end up? Well, the new rules answer this by demanding absolute end-to-end accountability for manufacturers. For decades, the toxic components of batteries have just quietly ended up in landfills. The 2026 Ecomark rules are designed to stop this entirely.
Manufacturers must now follow strict Extended Producer Responsibility, or EPR, steps to track and manage the entire life cycle of these hazardous products. First up, they have to register on the Central Pollution Control Board's Battery Waste Management Portal. That specific EPR registration number then has to be displayed right on the packaging. But it's way more than just paperwork. Manufacturers are now legally obligated to collect discarded or defective batteries, send them for proper recycling, and then submit annual compliance returns to prove they actually followed through.
Lead-acid battery makers are also facing an aggressive phase-in. They are now mandated to utilize domestically recycled lead, hitting a massive 70% target by 2026. And this isn't just a friendly suggestion, it's a strict quota. By forcing manufacturers to use 70% domestically recycled lead, the rules do two things at once. They dramatically reduce the demand for destructive virgin lead mining, and they create a highly lucrative closed-loop market for battery recyclers right within India.
Let's look at Section 4. Everyday Eco, Resource Management at Scale.
We are seeing some intense new restrictions on water and power here that heavily favor recycled paper and highly efficient zero-liquid discharge plants. Paper manufacturing is notoriously thirsty, right? But just listen to the difference here. A standard plant making writing paper from chemical pulp is allowed 45 kiloliters of fresh water per metric ton. However, if you're making 100% recycled paper, that limit plummets to under 15 kiloliters. And if the facility operates a zero liquid discharge plant, meaning no wastewater leaves the site at all, they must operate on incredibly lean metrics. We're talking under 3 kiloliters of water per ton. The Ecomark is directly rewarding extreme resource efficiency.
Now, for the coir industry, these rules mandate a hyper-local approach to water conservation, and they completely ban open-air processing that could contaminate surrounding lands. Coir, which is the natural fiber extracted from coconut husks, is a massive industry in India. To get the Ecomark now, the extraction process must be entirely mechanical, completely avoiding harsh chemical retting. Plus, these units are required to have rainwater harvesting systems, and they must reuse 100% of their treated wastewater. And to protect local soil ecosystems, open-air processing and dyeing are strictly prohibited.
Here's a really interesting cross-sector mandate. Both the paint and coir manufacturing industries are now legally required to source at least 25 to 30% of their total energy from renewable sources. This forces these industries to integrate solar, wind, or bioenergy directly into their production grids, which naturally drives down the overall carbon footprint of the final consumer product.
Next up, Section 5, Clean Safety, Fire Extinguishers Protecting Life and the Ozone. Manufacturers are now forced to use more than 90% recycled metal for their containers, drastically cutting down on virgin mining. When we picture fire extinguishers, we usually think of those heavy metal cylinders. By mandating that 90% of the metal components be sourced from recycled materials, the new rules ensure that the housing of the extinguisher itself is as sustainable as possible. But you might be wondering, what about the chemicals inside?
Well, the actual extinguishing agents and housings are being entirely stripped of forever chemicals and heavy metals to ensure clean safety. Historically, some firefighting foams were notorious for containing PFAS, which, as we know, severely contaminate groundwater or ozone-depleting substances. The new Ecomark standards absolutely forbid both. The extinguishing agents have to be completely free of heavy metals, and the containers themselves cannot use any halogenated plastics. It's essentially safety without the toxic aftereffects. And finally, Section 6, the manufacturing future, synthesis and circularity. Across multiple categories now, including batteries and fire extinguishers, we're seeing a strict mandate that packaging must be at least 90% biodegradable or highly recyclable. Because, let's be real, it's not enough for the product itself to be green if it arrives wrapped in layers of toxic, single-use halogenated plastics. The Ecomark rules are forcing a much more holistic view, ensuring that sustainability extends to the very box the product ships in.
So whether it's zero toxic discharge in paper production or 100% waste utilization in wood manufacturing, the regulatory focus has officially shifted to a zero-waste circular economy. This specific requirement regarding black liquor, which is a highly toxic byproduct of paper pulping, shows that the government fully expects industries to invest heavily in recovery infrastructure. It's all about capturing pollutants before they ever hit the environment and turning them back into usable resources.
So as these highly stringent Ecomark standards raise the global bar for sustainability, what steps will you take today to ensure your products can actually thrive in this transparent, eco-conscious future? The 2026 Ecomark rules send a crystal-clear signal. The era of surface-level greenwashing is officially over. With QR code transparency, absolute bans on forever chemicals, and mandated recycled inputs, true sustainability is now the absolute baseline for excellence. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive, and I'll see you in the next explainer.